Welcome everybody to Thru-Hiking the Appalachian Trail. So we want to thank the Friends of the Belmont Public Library for supporting tonight's program. Sam, excuse me, I'm sorry. Welcome everybody. This recording will be available on our YouTube channel after tonight's event. I'll send out the link to everybody when it's ready. So an avid outdoorsman, Sam decided to buy a backpack and a plane ticket to Georgia. From there, he started walking north on the Appalachian Trail. With no prior backpacking experience, he learned on the trail, and he's going to talk about this journey and what the hard lessons he learned along the way. Everybody, thank you, and let me welcome Sam Ducharme.
Thank you, Corinne. I appreciate the invitation. I thank the Friends of the Belmont Public Library. They always foot the bill for these awesome programs. So I just want to let everybody know that welcome to the program, and thanks for coming. This is actually like a precursor to the program that we have lined up in the future over at Belmont. I said Belmont, right? Belmont Public Library. And I want to say the wrong library. So if you like tonight's program, this is a fun, warm, fuzzy glimpse of the Appalachian Trail. Then you might want to come to the program as soon as the doors are open again. So let's get started. A little bit about me. I live in Woodstock, Connecticut. If you're from Belmont or Massachusetts, it's not far from Sturbridge, Mass, just over the Connecticut border. If you're from anywhere else in the country, it's over in the northeast corner of Connecticut. So everybody wants to know why I hike the Appalachian Trail. Well, first of all, I did it in 2015. So this is 5 years ago. I would have been on the trail right now. But a few things were happening at the time. I was a corrections officer for the state of Connecticut. It was a pretty exciting job. I was a K-9 officer. When I wasn't working at the prison, I had two young boys I was raising as a single parent, and we spent a lot of time in Maine. So if you notice, up to the corner of the screen here, right here, you'll see a picture of a mountain. That picture is Mount Katahdin. And that is the view from our camp up in Maine, where we spent a lot of time doing a lot of, hunting and fishing and kayaking and camping and exploring. And so we spent a lot of time. Well, one day I went up there with my boys. We climbed to the top of the mountain. And it's quite a climb. Those of you who have climbed it know it's just a big, huge pile of rocks, 5,200 feet. I get to the top, and there's a group of people up there, ragtag looking group. They were skinny, they had long beards. They looked like either homeless or hippies or whatever, and they were making such a fuss. Right here, you can see the Katahdin summit sign and Baxter Peak. And as I approach, I'm like, wow, what are they doing? They're really making a fuss over that sign. And so as I walk up there, trying to catch my breath and everything, I said, what's going on? And they said, we just finished our through hike, the Appalachian Trail. And I was like, wow, all the way from Connecticut? Because I didn't know much more, about the Appalachian Trail other than that went through Connecticut. And they said, no, we went through from Georgia all the way up here, and this is the final day. And they were really excited, and we sat down and they told me stories, awesome stories about the scenery and the wildlife and the friends they met along the way. And they even told me a story about 100-mile wilderness where they didn't see a paved road or a power line for 100 miles. And they told stories, terrible weather and scary wildlife encounters. And that day, I wouldn't know when, but that day the seed was planted, and I knew someday I'd love to do something cool like that. Well, fast forward, 20 years of working in the prison, you change, you're older. My boys are now grown. They both went into the Air Force, and they left home and they started their own lives. And my dog, my canine partner, who I had for 13 years, he got old, like pets do, and passed away. And that home that was so full of life when the kids were there with their friends and the dogs running around now seemed huge, and it was time for me to do something in my life. And I said, you know what? Went back all the way back to that day on the top of the mountain. I said, I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail. So that's what gets me started on this. After 20 years, I wasn't the same person as I was when I started in corrections. In fact, let's see. Let's go over here. That's me when I started the trail. Working in a prison's pretty negative environment. It's violent. It's, you know, untrustworthy inmates, stressful. And after 20 years, basically that was me. I was a beat up onion. I was like that one at the bottom of the bag, was soft. It was, you know, it wasn't going to get used. It wasn't really good for anything. I had a bad attitude. I was short tempered. Somebody would get my Dunkin' Donuts coffee wrong. I want to go in there and, you know, throw a fit. Somebody cut me off on the highway. I wanted to scream at them. So I was not the same person. I had a negative attitude, so I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail. Now, those of you who don't know about the Appalachian Trail, starts in Georgia. It goes through 14 states. It took me almost 6 months, 2,189.2 miles, and it took me 3 seasons. So it's a long trail, follows the East Coast, and we'll start with that. Now, the cool thing about it, as long as it is, and as remote as it is in some areas, you don't need a map, you don't need a GPS or a compass. You just follow these blazes. 177,000 of them from Georgia to Maine. They're painted on both sides of the trees. You just basically need to follow those blazes. Now, I did have a map, not foolish. I needed to know where the towns were and water sources and stuff, but my whole plan was basically to follow these blazes. Now, they painted them on trees most of the time, but as you can see up here, they also paint them on rocks sometimes. This is up in Maine. Sometimes they paint them on rocks and trees. Sometimes where there's no rocks and there's no trees, they dig a hole, put a post in the ground, and they paint the post with a white blaze so you know where you're going. This is North Carolina, a place called Max Patch. Sometimes, like this in the Cumberland Valley of Pennsylvania, we go through agricultural lands, and as you can see, if you look to the right of the picture, you see the corn growing up. So they put the posts way up, like 10 feet high, so we could find the next post as we're following our way north. Now, I went north to south, south to north, but a lot of people like this year who have to start out late are starting south, up north, and they're going south. But I chose to go north because I could start in March and hopefully finish by the end of the summer, early September. Now, this deer in front of us, that's like magic when that happens. You walk for hours and hours, and all of a sudden you look up and there's a beautiful doe standing in front of you. That's magic. Those are the days you really, the moments you really treasure. Sometimes, like on the top of Mount Moosilauke here in Maine, you can't dig a hole for a post. There's no trees, no giant rocks, and they pile rocks up to use for navigation. They're called cairns. I'm kind of holding off because I think I said Maine, but it's actually New Hampshire. But these cairns are used for navigation, and the upkeep, the maintaining of the trails is all done by volunteers. And one of the jobs they have is to keep these cairns built, because picture this, in the middle of fog, you couldn't see where you're going. You just have to find that next cairn, or maybe in the winter time when everything's covered with a foot or two of snow and you're the first person over the mountain, you wouldn't be able to follow the trail. So you navigate by these cairns. It's pretty fun. Now, this is how I camped every night. I would hike. My plan was to follow the next blaze, you know, and when I got tired, I would put a hammock up and and sleep and rest, because I was 49 years old. I had never hiked before, and I figured I need my sleep, and I sleep well in a hammock. So I would walk off the trail, put my hammock up. Right here you can see there's my hammock with it's like a sleeping bag wrapped around. It's called a quilt. And above that is my tarp. And at night I would stretch the tarp out in case it snowed or rained. And after a day of hiking, all your clothes are soaking wet, so I would hang up my clothes to dry, which never dried. It was always wet. Now, I could have slept in one of these. This is called a shelter. There's 262 of them on the trail. They're all about the same. They're different shapes and sizes, but they have 3 walls. They have a nice roof over your head, a sleeping platform so you can get off the ground. You're pretty protected from the weather. I didn't sleep in many of these because after 20 years of working in the prison, I had learned a lot about bloodborne pathogens and airborne pathogens and norovirus and hepatitis, tuberculosis, and all those things you get from other people. So my friends call me a germphobe. I call myself germ conscious, but that's why I sleep out in a hammock. I didn't want to have to crawl in next to a bunch of people every night. And the other thing is I snore like a bear, so I figured they would like it if I was out in the woods. Now, nice thing about these shelters also is that a lot of them, most of them have picnic tables. You know, volunteers bring the pieces out and build them. And sometimes scout troops bring them out and build them. But whoever builds that picnic table, when you're ready for lunch and just want to sit down for a little while, they're much appreciated. Another thing that you can find around a lot of the shelters is one of these. This here is a privy, and this is a really beautiful one, but I didn't use any of the privies either, and if you can guess why, it's because they were disgusting. Okay, there's a lot of germs. If people aren't, you know, really careful, you could spread those germs around. And so this leads me into a topic I like to talk about, which is, if I didn't use this, then what did I do? I went and pooped in the woods. And so you guys may not like to poop in the woods, but some of us like to poop in the woods, and it gives me a chance to talk about leave no trace. Because if you poop in the woods correctly, you're doing a good thing. So leave no trace. You want to leave the land the way you found it. You dig a hole 3 to 5 inches around, 3 to 5 inches deep, do your business, put all the paper in it, throw the soil back in, throw the leaves on it, leave the ground like you found it. Let the work go to the worms, and the world is a better place. So, you know, we practice leave no trace, not only while pooping in the woods, which is always a fun topic to talk about, but leave no trace applies to when you're camping at night. You don't put garbage in the fireplace for the next people. You don't wash your noodles out and your rice out into the stream where other animals are going to come and get them. You want to just leave nature as it is, or the best you can. So that's my gig on privies. So I got to tell you, after this we'll break. If there's any questions coming in, I have a couple of questions actually I want to get to, but the first month for me was sheer torture. I got to tell you, I wasn't a hiker. I was built more for wrestling with inmates than I was for humping up and down the hills of Georgia. And in fact, when I say hills of Georgia, I don't want to mislead you. They're mountains. And the way the trail goes in Georgia, you think somebody's making a joke, because you go over the mountain, down into the gap, which is the low area between the two mountains, and then straight back up. So I was doing a lot of that, and doing a lot of huffing and puffing and wondering what I had gotten myself into. Something that was going around in my head a lot was, this stinks. I shouldn't be here. Maybe I'll go home. And And then all of a sudden you look up and you see a beautiful scenery. You see something like this. And you go, oh, that's right. I'm on the Appalachian Trail. This is what I'm doing out here. This is beautiful. And it really lifts you up. One view like this, and you're zooming. And that motivation that you get from looking out will sometimes carry you down to the bottom, up to the next top. But in the winter, down south, a lot of these mountaintops are only 2,500 feet, 3,500 feet, and they're covered with trees because they still have soil. So you don't get a lot of views, a lot of payoff for all that work you're doing. So when you do get it, it really picks you up. Now, I had a couple of questions to start with that I wanted to touch on. These are good questions. One of them was, it sounds like you didn't prepare for the journey beforehand. If you could go back in time, how would you prepare the second time around? Well, I don't know who wrote that, but you are exactly right. In 2014, we had so much snow. Everybody around Belmont knows what I'm talking about. We were either shoveling snow, carrying firewood, or cleaning the snow off our cars. So you can't hike in 4 feet of snow. So I didn't do a lot of exercising. I thought, what the heck? It's only walking, you know? So I was wrong. It was pretty brutal. And so if I was to do it again, I would do a lot of cardio because the legs are sore. For a time there, the first week, I was really in a lot of pain, shin splints, sore legs and stuff. But the cardio, when you can hear your own ears pounding your heartbeat, then you know you're out of shape. So yeah, I would get in shape, a lot of cardio. Here's one. How much was the expense of the entire trip? Well, I would say if you're going to go out and do this Appalachian Trail, after your initial output of your money, you should have at least, it's going to cost you about $1,000 a month, but you should have $1,500 a month budgeted because you're going to break equipment, you're going to have to replace clothing, shoes, whatnot. And if you sprain an ankle and you have to put yourself up in a hotel room for a week or something, you got to have that money. I just carried a debit card. I always carried $50 cash on me. And that's basically how I ran that. What I do for food. So this trail is on the east coast of the United States, you know, where 2/3 of Americans live. So even though we were walking or hiking through the Appalachian Mountains, or don't say Appalachians down south, you want to say Appalachian. Every 4 or 5 days, you are going to hit a community. There's 113 trail towns that you go through. Some you walk right through the middle. Others you have to hitchhike 9 miles or so. But there's generally a dollar store or a grocery store. And if you're really desperate, a gas station that sells peanut butter and jelly, you know. Did your childhood growing up in Woodstock help with thru-hike stamina? Well, I don't know who wrote that, but it's somebody from Woodstock, I guarantee you. If you throw enough bales of hay and you scrape enough hay barns and you mow enough lawns, you think you're ready for the Appalachian Trail, but I did have to work on my stamina a little bit. So, more questions in a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
So we did have one in the chat that I wanted to just jump in and add that. Well, we had a couple actually. So we had, how did you fight off loneliness? If you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So after 20 years of working in the prison, right, and being surrounded with all the negativity, and it's a whole different aspect of the world. And in fact, at the time I started the trail, I thought that I had been in the prison working for 20 years, and I had started to believe that's how people were, and that's the way life was, negative and just you know, sneaky and dangerous. And so my whole idea was to get in the woods and get away from people for 6 months. I thought that would be appealing, and that was really my motivation. But once I got out there, I realized that there were a lot of people. There were a lot of people attempting to hike, a lot of people in the community offering their assistance. So I was surrounded by a lot more people than I thought. There are times, and especially you parents out there who know, well, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's certain things that you do that really bring you back to when you were doing these things with your kids. For example, one of the things I love to do with my kids is go out and explore the woods. And whenever I found something really cool, let's say a cave or a waterfall or a stream that we just jumped into, I would really get a heavy dose of loneliness, because it brought me back to the times up in Maine with my children. And when you're on the trail working all day and your only goal is just to get in miles and miles, and it's painful every single day, you push yourself to the limit and you're tired, you get to your campsite at night and you're beat. You do focus on those things, and you do get to miss those loved ones. So luckily for me, when you wanted people around, they were there. Most of the time when you wanted people away, you could manage that too. I don't know if that's a complete answer, but you don't get too lonely out there unless you want to be.
That makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, so we have one more that I want to add, and then we'll save any others till a little bit later.
Okay.
So you talked a little bit about having funds for each month that you're on the trail, but we had a question about how much money did you kind of spend on your gear before you started?
Okay, good question. So before I left, I decided in February, with all that snow, my kids were gone, the house was quiet, my dog had passed away, I was kind of melancholy. I decided in February that I wanted to go in March. So the first thing I had to do was go get the gear, right? So I heard of this, I was watching YouTube videos, and I heard about this store called REI. It's a sports store, you know? And so they sell backpacks and shoes and hiking gear and stuff. So I drove to West Hartford, which I don't do too often, living up in Woodstock. And I walked in, the guy's like, "Can I help you, sir?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to thru-hike the Appalachian Trail next month, and I need everything because I never hiked before." And the guy was like, "Follow me," you know? And so he sold me basically everything the store could part with, and I didn't know it. I was just throw it in the bag, give it to me. I needed an extra body to help me carry it out to the truck. But that visit right there cost me about $1,500. I think a person who knew what they were doing could spend less than that, buy a little less gear. I sent a lot of gear home, but to buy quality gear and stuff, you're going to spend. And the big three is however you're sleeping. Like I slept in a hammock, needed a tarp, I needed an underquilt. Tent sleepers they need to invest in a good quality tent, good sleeping bag, and a good backpack. Those three things will cost you $1,000 right there. So it's pretty costly. All right, we're going to move on. So I talked about how the trail was laid out with the blazes and everything, but there is a lot of beautiful scenery like that one I just showed you. Here's a picture of this is Georgia early in the hike. Late in the day, you can see the moisture in the air. This is a little bit later in the day. You can see it's March 15th is when I left. So this is within days of my start. You can see that none of the deciduous trees have their leaves on, just some of the conifers out there, but still beautiful nonetheless. Just looking at the layers of mountain and the creases in the valleys, just fantastic. By the time I got into the Smoky Mountains, I was feeling a little bit better. I lost some weight. My stamina was building. The Smoky Mountains is about a 4 to 5 day stretch, which would prove to be our first real challenge on this hike. For me, the challenge started on day one, but I think really testing yourself at the higher elevations, rugged terrain, This was the first real test for the hikers we had in mind. So unfortunately for me, the first 3 days were really bad weather, a lot of snow, a lot of rain, a lot of wind. But on the second to the last day, the sun came out. And this is what I was looking at. And I was like so stoked because I had been walking through this type of scenery for 2.5 days and not seen anything. Well, here I am standing on the Sawtooth Mountain Range portion of the park, and I just had to stop and look. I mean, look at the view. This is awesome. I mean, this is not awesome like somebody sends you a text and you say, oh, awesome. This is not awesome like somebody tells you, oh, my kid graduated from preschool this year. Oh, awesome. No, this is awesome. This is take your shoes off, have a snack, lay down on the rocks, just absorb this for an hour, hour and a half. Awesome. That's what the word awesome means right here. The Sawtooth Mountains in the Rocky Mountains National Park. And this was my real first taste. I was feeling good. Didn't have to stop because I was out of breath. I stopped because it was awesome. Here's another shot within the park. You can see we walked through the forest. This is the middle of the day. I mean, it was almost dark because the conifers were so dense and the woods were so damp. You can see the moss all over. It was just a really awesome place to be. This guy right here, I walked the first 400 miles or so with him. His name is Dusty Pilgrim. We ended up being good friends, and everybody from Belmont, you're gonna love this. Dusty Pilgrim was from Plymouth, Massachusetts. So some of you might know him. He worked in the fire department over there. He and I became great friends. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dusty Pilgrim, that's kind of a corny name, but everybody on the trail is going to the trail with their own backgrounds. You know, he was a firefighter. I was a corrections officer. Fortunately, that's why our sense of humor is meshed so well. You know, we both were working in that environment where we thought things were funny and maybe other people didn't. But when you go to the trail, you leave your old world behind. You can be whoever you want. Some people come to the trail and they give themselves a name that is totally opposite of what they were named when they were at home. That's called a trail name. It's a pretty cool tradition. A lot of people go to the trail, will get a trail name. I remember about the 4th day in, Dusty Pilgrim said to me, hey, Sam, I am. I said, yeah. He said, no, that's your trail name. I said, oh, yeah, when that happened? He said, oh, a bunch of us were talking this morning, and we decided that's your trail name. And I was like, all right, awesome. I remember later in that day, I was calling my boys, and I'm like, hey, got a trail name today. And they're like, what is it? I said, Sam I Am. And they're like, awesome. So it's a fun tradition. A lot of the people I met became friends on the trail with. I didn't even know their real names till after we got done the trail and we were corresponding later. So, there's Dusty Pilgrim, a great friend of mine. Now, I got to tell you, this trail gets in your blood. I finished the trail in one run. For whatever reasons Dusty had, he had to break his hike up. He broke it up into 4 years. And on the 4th year, before he made it to Maine, they found him deceased in his tent. Love the guy. I never do a program without talking about him. He's a great guy, and he really had the Appalachian Trail in his blood. Here's something I loved. If you were to get up high in the mountains on a morning like this morning or tomorrow morning, because it's so humid out, you could look down into the valleys and you could see nothing but clouds, just an ocean of fluffy clouds. That was one of my favorite things. I guess I have a lot of favorite things, but that I love doing. This is a picture from Maine. Not only is it a beautiful picture, but Whitecap Mountain, it's the last Whitecap Mountain. It's the last 4,000 footer that you reach before the big K. And when I say K, I mean Katahdin. And it's looking south. This picture is looking from where I just came from, over all those mountains to get here. And now I just have to turn around. I can see Katahdin in the distance, and it's basically home stretch. There are also some pretty epic spots on the trail. This one is McAfee Knob. It's in Virginia, Catawba, Virginia. I always like to show this picture for a couple of reasons. First of all, obviously it's epic. Secondly, I like to encourage everybody to go there, because if you take Route I-81 south to Salem, Virginia, and get off that exit, only 20 minutes away is a trailhead. You park your car there, you walk 3.9 miles from the car, and you can stand on this same ledge. And it's as epic as it looks. You can see down into the valley. Right here is where the Appalachian Trail continues, and then it'll continue down this way too. Awesome portion of the trail. I encourage you all to get out there. McAfee's Knob, or McAfee's Knob, depending on who you talk to. Other spots that weren't quite as dramatic as this, but meant just as much. State lines. Every time you crossed over a state line, it was something to celebrate. You had 14 states. Some of them were fast. West Virginia was only 4 miles. You walked into West Virginia, and then you walked into Maryland 4 miles later. Some were longer. Virginia was 550 miles. It took a whole month to get through, but each time you cross into a different state, it was epic. It was something to celebrate. You can tell by the smile. Some of you from Massachusetts might recognize this. This is, got the picture right in front of it. This is Mount Greylock. This obelisk is awesome. You can go right up in there, go all the way to the top and look over the Pioneer Valley along the Appalachian Mountain Range. It's awesome. Of course, when I got there, it was closed, so I had to take the view from below. But for those of you, and look at all the hikers around there, it's a great destination hike. You can get to it easily within a couple hours, especially of Belmont Public. You can get there, and if you don't want to hike up this mountain, that's okay. It's the highest point in Massachusetts. You can actually drive your car up to the top and park in the parking lot. Here's another one, the Vermont Long Trail. So as you walk into Vermont from Massachusetts, you step onto the Vermont Long Trail. Now, the Long Trail goes straight up to Canada, and the Appalachian Trail follows it for 130 miles. So that was pretty epic, because if you're a hiker and you live in New England, the Long Trail is one of the long trails that you always have in your sights. So I was excited to see the first 100 miles or so. We're going to talk about wildlife, but Corinne, if you have any questions, now's a good time. Here's one. Would I do it again? Well, I would do a long trail again. There's a lot of long trails. The Long Trail is one that I'd like to do, but there's some other ones out west, Pacific Crest Trail, the CDC. So I would do, and I will do another long trail someday, but I don't know if I do the Appalachian Trail again. How are you using the great outdoors safely during this time of the pandemic? So that's another great question. So still like to hike every day. Been staying home for the most part. Got a wicked good garden going this year. But we cut down a lot of our traveling. We like to go to horse shows. We like to take our camper places and hike from there. But this year it's been more searching out really remote trails that don't have a lot of traffic. We've been hiking only on the during the week to stay away from any crowds, and just being smart. You know, there's some etiquette on the trail. Like if somebody's going uphill and you're coming down, you usually step off the trail and let the uphill we kind of using that now, but anywhere on the trail, even on flat sections, you want to step off the trail and let the people go through, because the people that are walking by you are also trying to get out during a pandemic, get some fresh air, but they don't want to really be around people. So I noticed that not only are we stepping off the trail, but everybody else is kind of doing the same thing. So that's how we've been doing it. We've been staying a little bit closer to home and planning less epic trips like, New Hampshire 4,000 footers, which is really what we're planning on doing. All right, so let's talk about some, I saw you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And you actually also answered one of the other questions in the chat, which was if you were ever planning on taking on another big hike like the Pacific Crest Trail. You already addressed that. Good. One of the questions from a little earlier was, while you were on the trail, kind of how did you change? Like, how did you have emotional changes, and how long did those changes last? Like, were there?
That's an excellent question. A lot of people that go out to the trail, a lot of us are searching for something. I mean, in my case, I didn't know that I was searching for something. I thought I was trying to get away from something. But as this program continues, I kind of touch on that. So hold on to that. That's going to get answered in a few minutes. So before I get to that, let me talk about some wildlife. As you can see, this is if you didn't know, this is a North American black bear, and it's a sow or a female black bear, and it's a big one, as you can see. And the way I know it's a sow is because I came walking around this tree right here, bebop into my iPod, and right in front of me, right by this root here, was 3 cubs. And I startled them, they startled me, they jumped up on their hind feet. Cute as can be, they're probably 2.5 feet high, and we just kind of froze for a second, and then Mama walks out of the bushes. It doesn't walk, she kind of runs out of the bushes, all fluffed up like a dog getting ready to attack, and she huffed twice, and those bears dropped to their fours, and they ran straight up this tree right here. I mean, way up. And I didn't know what was going on. I was like, wow, do I make myself big? Yeah, no. Do I yell? No. Do I walk? Don't walk backwards? No. Now I'm running through all these things in my mind. And then she kind of let me off the hook. She snapped her teeth a few times, and then she just sat her big bare butt right down on the trail and basically said, this trail's closed for the time being. So I had to walk back, wait about a half an hour, and let her move out before I moved on. So I saw 7 bears in total. I know a lot of people who saw more. I know a lot of people who saw less, but they're out there. Not only the big stuff, but look at this guy. This is a timber rattler. This is in New Jersey. You can tell a timber rattler for the most part by this distinctive marking, but the last third or so of the body usually gets darker or almost black, and it's got the diamond-shaped head. And I tell you what, I hate snakes. I hate all snakes. I hate little garter snakes. I hate little cute green snakes. I hate these big ones that you wrap around your neck, cobras. I hate them all. Now, I don't kill them. I recognize their place in nature and all that, but I hate them. They're scary. They're creepy. They creep. That's what they do. They creep. So I got to tell you, as far as snakes go, I saw 4 of these guys on the trail. The rattlesnake has got to be the coolest, because it sees you coming, it feels you coming, it can tell by the heat that you're coming down the trail, and it doesn't want to get bothered, so he kind of shakes his tail like, hey dude, I'm over here, you don't mess with me, I won't mess with you. And so you walk by and he just goes back to digesting that squirrel or rabbit or whatever he's got. In my opinion, I think all snakes should have rattles, but for all those people out there that really like snakes, there's a lot of snakes on the trail. I saw about 40 of them at least, some really big ones, some all like 7 feet long or more, and then these guys too. So yeah, I saw some snakes. People who know me know I do not like snakes. But not all the animals are big and scary like the rattlesnakes and the bears. This is a wolf spider, and I woke up one day, reached down for my hammock to get my glasses out of my shoe, And this guy's on my backpack, which I kept underneath my hammock, and he's pretty big. If you can see this thing right here, when my dog passed away, I kept his tags and I kept it on my backpack, and so you can compare that spider to my backpack. He was big and hairy. I chased him into the woods with a stick. And then you have the little things like this guy. I mean, look at the texture on him. He's beautiful. And of course, you have the deer, who absolutely do not seem to be afraid of humans. We were going in different directions, and we stopped, and we both looked at each other, and then we both continued on our way, walked around each other. Now, you get a lot of treats from the trail. A lot of fringe benefits, like the cold, clear water. Not only do we drink this stuff, we cook with it, we can swim in it. There's nothing better on a hot day than jumping in a nice cold stream. This stream is so clear that it's up to my neck, by the way. You can see my feet, my white feet. And then, of course, the berries, blueberries, blackberries, red raspberries, they're everywhere. I mean, it was like I would graze through berry patches and just eat them like a bear. But really, one of the things that you find out on the trail, which you never expect, is you expect the mountains, you expect the bears and the snakes, you expect the beautiful valleys, but this is something I didn't expect. This is Crazy Tree from Georgia. I came out of the woods one morning, and he was set up there in his tent, and he had a stove going, and he offered us pancakes first thing in the morning. So that was pretty awesome. He wasn't asking for any money. He was just doing it out of kindness of his heart. You can see down here, he's got some clear water to help us fill up, because we have to get water from the streams and the lakes and stuff. And Crazy Tree was offering this up just out of kindness of his heart. So we have a special name for him, and we call Crazy Tree and people like him that do this type of thing, we call them trail angels. And Crazy Tree, if you're watching, I still remember that day, because this is one of the first times I got this crazy phenomenon that happened to me. Was people starting with Crazy Tree were on the side of the road helping out without being asked. I didn't know them. Pancakes, 7 in the morning. What's better than that? Pancakes, we call that trail magic, and we call Crazy Tree a trail angel. So thanks again to Crazy Tree. This guy, oh boy, I was on my way. I gotta go back before I tell you about this guy, but I was heading out into the woods by myself. It was the first time that I did something like this without my children, and I wanted to share with them this epic journey. So I decided to make a YouTube channel, and that ended up sending me into the libraries once a week to upload a video so my kids could see it. One, I think, was in Louisiana. The other one was in Mississippi or Guam. I don't remember, but I wanted them to see it every week, and so I found myself hitchhiking. Now, Ernie here picked me up. I had a sign that said library. He picked me up. He said, oh, that's out of town about 4 miles, but I'll bring you. Go ahead. Come on, let's go. And we got talking about fishing and hunting and stuff, and we drove right by that library and kept going a couple miles before we realized we had to turn around. I mean, these are the people that I started finding out on this Appalachian Trail, which I did not expect. Oh, Sarah. So Sarah is a canine officer in Tennessee. She was watching these videos because, come to find out, not just my kids were watching. People who like the Appalachian Trail and hikers were watching, and Sarah was watching, and she said, hey, she hit me up with a message. She says, I'm a canine officer. You getting close to my house? Let me take you home. And she brought Dusty Pilgrim and I home, fed us, let us wash up and wash our clothes and sleep on a bed. I even got to watch a hockey game. So these were things that I had no idea. I didn't see them in any videos. It was the most surprising part of the hike. This guy, here's Dusty. Look at the smile on his face. This guy came out every morning with fresh water. It's just a stretch of woods that has very little streams, and he would come out every morning and bring fresh water to hikers as they pass through. Just amazing. So we have this thing on the trail. We call it, well, it's like a mantra, and we say the trail will provide. And what it means is, you know, something is going to happen good to you, and for no particular reason. You don't deserve it, but it's mostly going to happen when you need it the most. And Dusty and I were, Dusty and I were walking through the woods, and he said, Sam, if you could have any fruit in the world, what would it be? And I said, oh, that's easy, Dusty. I would have watermelon. We come onto this bridge at a road crossing. We hear a bunch of people talking, and it's trail magic. And look at here, 20 minutes after he asked me what I had to eat, what I would love to eat, and here I am eating it. So sometimes you just don't know why things happen, but if you say trail, the trail will provide, sometimes it gives you the answer you're looking for. Look at, Pepper on the right, she picked me up and brought me back to the trail in Pennsylvania. And in Dina, I hurt my knee in Virginia. She picked me up and brought me 6 miles into a town so I could buy a knee brace. Sometimes you don't even get to see the trail angels. They leave food and soda and beer and water on the side of the trail for you to just walk through, pick up, have a drink, and throw your garbage in the red bag. This one says, happy trails with love from Wonder Woman. Sounds like she's a hiker too. Now listen, I told you I slept in my hammock every day, but I gotta tell you about this one shelter. It's a 501 shelter. It's in Pennsylvania. It's near Route 501, and it also has a pizza joint down the road, and they deliver. So I was all in. But that's not the greatest part. The greatest part about this trail is who hikes it. And I could tell you a story about every single person sitting here. But I really want you to look at the guy in the blue shirt. I want you to look at that face, that smile. Maybe he loves his pizza, but I got to know him a little bit better, and I know why he's smiling. See, this guy just battled colon cancer for the last 2 years. He went through the treatments. He had grim, it looked like he was going to be in rough shape, maybe not even make it. He had surgery, had portions of his colon removed. But you know what? He stuck it out. He worked hard. He had the right attitude, and he is well. He got the doctor's pass to do something big in his life because he's a survivor. And so he decided he was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. So here he is now. In Pennsylvania, over the halfway point, having pizza with a bunch of other hikers in a shelter on a rainy night. And his trail name is Semicolon. True story. That smile. All right, back to the trail. Here's another chance to talk about Leave No Trace. See, this is not a brook. This is actually the trail after about 48 hours of rain. Leave no trace means you don't go cut new trails around the mud. Wouldn't have mattered in Pennsylvania. It was a lot of rain had flooded all the trails. But just so you know, this is what Leave No Trace looks like after 48 hours of walking in the rain. Sorry about that. New Jersey was pretty nice. New Jersey, the trail is flat. The only thing is you got to walk through these huge swamps. But just to make it nice, they put these boards all the way through, called bog bridges, so you don't have to walk in the mud. Some of them were pretty nice, like this one. And this one was particularly nice because every half a mile or so, there was benches out there, and you could just sit there and scratch your mosquito bites and put another layer of DEET on. So you're not going to believe this, but this is a club in New Jersey that they do nothing but give trail magic. Every day they have different people go out and they give trail magic. The trail will provide. And this lady, I was hiking with another buddy later in the hike. His name is Red Hot. You'll get to know him very well if you come to the other program. But he and I were walking through, and this lady said, we're in Vermont. She said, are you guys through hikers? And I said, no, not yet. We're aspiring through hikers, though. And she said, well, here, I got something for you. I brought this out for a through hiker. And so she gave us this awesome sandwich. And this guy picked me up hitchhiking, didn't speak a lick of English. I had a sign that said AT. He said, you know, what's AT, basically? I said, it's a trail, you hike. He says, get in, show me. And he brought me all the way back to the trail. This is probably one of the last surviving RX-7s in the world. And sometimes when you're hitchhiking into town, you can't really be picky with who you're riding with. In this case, I got to ride with somebody who was, he rivaled me for stinkiness. All right, back to the trail. We're heading to, Corinne, do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, we've got a quick question here
Okay.
from your biggest fan. I suspect that's your son. So you talked about the trail providing for you and you getting that watermelon that you were craving. But this question is more, while you were out there eating out of a dry bag for 6 months, it sounds like there were times that you could get some outside food. But overall, what food did you miss the most?
Well, perishables. The foods you miss the most are perishables, fresh vegetables, fresh fruit. There's times where you can buy some, I lived on tortillas in tuna fish and Spam and salmon from the packet, from a little foil bag. But you miss the roast beefs, the hams, the anything that can go, a steak for crying out loud, and certain things like a piece of cake. You're burning between 5,000 and 6,000 calories a day. You're craving anything, to be honest with you. I went into a McDonald's once, ate 3 double cheeseburgers twice with fries, walked around the town. 2 days later, hitched back into town, ate 3 cheeseburgers, ordered 3 more cheeseburgers with fries. So you can't get enough. So you're craving everything. But one of the things you miss the most is definitely perishables, fresh fruit and vegetables. Am I getting a thumbs up?
Awesome, thank you. But yeah, that's all that we had for those questions there. So keep going. If anybody else has any questions.
We're gonna wrap it up soon, so if they have questions, they can catch me at the end. Now the hike was getting real. We're getting into New Hampshire. Anybody who hikes the Appalachian Trail and knows about the Appalachian Trail knows the hike. Everything before you step into New Hampshire is training for New Hampshire and Maine. So now we're getting into it. We cross the Connecticut River, and it's time to start the big mountains. I was hiking with my buddy Red Hot. That's him right there. And as you can see, now we're in the White Mountains. We're up above tree line. It's beautiful to take a break and have your lunch with a view like this. The mountains are huge. They're challenging, but by now we're in excellent shape, so we're eating them up like nothing. This right here is Franconia Ridge. We're gonna come up here tomorrow's hike and hike this ridge all the way over. It's a highlight of the hike for sure. So we're talking about meeting people on the trail. So this is Red Hot, who we ended up hiking all the way to the end, 700 miles or so together. We're good friends. I'm sure he's out here watching. Red Hot, if you're out there, love you, buddy. But this was coming out of Pinkham Notch, New Hampshire. And it was a pretty rough hike out. We got out late because, again, I went into town to use a library's internet to put another video up. He went into town to do some shopping, and we had a trail angel bring us back to the trail. If you ever hiked up Wildcat Mountain in 85 degrees, it might as well be 105 because it's a tough climb. A lot of elevation gain in a short amount of time. It was late in the afternoon. We got to the top, and there's like this observation tower. So the tower itself is not like a fire tower. It just looks across the valley, or the notch in New Hampshire is what they call valleys. and you're looking right at Mount Washington. Now, we climbed Mount Washington the day prior, but it was cloudy and rainy, and there were 600 people up there riding bicycles, big bicycle race and stuff, so we kind of skimmed right over. But today, we wanted to camp on top of this observation deck, so that's what we did. And it was pretty buggy, like it is right now in here. And Red Hot put his tent up, and I just put my tarp up, and we decided we'd wait for sunset. And Red was in his tent. I was eating a tortilla with peanut butter and jelly and tuna fish, and I was thinking, oh, I should get Red Hot up. I haven't heard anything in a while. And he unzips his tent, you know that sound. He gets out of the tent, and he walks up to me and he says, everybody deserves a cake on their 50th birthday. Happy birthday, buddy. He lugged that cake all the way up that mountain and gave it to me on my 50th birthday. So when it comes to meeting people on the trail, the whole vibe of the trail, you're gonna meet somebody like Red Hot. And he and I are close friends. We will be till we die, but this moment on the trail was one of the most touching moments. So going back to the question, how does the trail change you? Well, when this happens, you get changed. And when enough people do stuff like this, you come out different. And I'll get even more into that in a little bit. So heading toward Maine, here we are going down to Presidentials. It's beautiful. We walk into southern Maine. We call it southern Maine. It's really western Maine. We go into the Mahoosucs. This is a pretty rough stretch and slowed us down to 1 mile in an hour. You can see how rugged this part of the state is, probably harder than in New Hampshire, for sure. The trail gets pretty bony. We thought we were just going to coast all the way to Mount Katahdin and our finish, but the trail drops some ruddy stretches on us, like days of this. But eventually we got there. We got to the foot of the mountain. Red and I said we were going to do that tomorrow, and that's what we did. We took one day to climb up and down, and we sailed up there. It was beautiful weather, and it was amazing. Here's Red Hot right there, and he's carrying an old vintage backpack, which you'll hear more about in the full program or in the book. That's a whole half hour in itself. But we made it to the top, and it was a wonderful feeling. We went from being non-hikers to long-distance hikers, and finally to thru-hikers. It was an awesome moment. You can see here I went through a little bit of change, but really I didn't expect the people. You go through, you see the bears, you see the snakes, you know it's all coming, but you don't expect Max Factor to come out here and pick up 10 hikers and bring them home and cook them a full dinner and let you use his condo and wash your clothes and bring you back to the trail the next day. You don't expect Dirty Ernie and Squirrel to be sitting on the side of the trail with coolers full of ice cold sodas, water, and beer and snacks for you. You don't expect the store to pull up while you're hitchhiking and a pot come rolling out of the windows to go, hey, you need a ride? And you say, yeah, what the heck, you know, and then you take a ride into town because you'd rather risk your life than to do off-trail miles. And all the people who left boxes, coolers full of food on the side of the trail, you just don't expect that. This guy right here, his name's Easy Strider. We became good friends on the trail, still are to this day, despite the dress. And these two people, you don't expect meeting people on the trail as hikers, becoming friends with them on the trail, and then having them come out to the trail after they go home and set up trail magic so they can see you and treat you to trail magic, treat all the hikers to trail magic, and give you some familiar face and laughs and hugs and, you know, the friendships that last forever. And here's a buddy from home. I got friends from home came out, meet me on the trail. This is my friend Donnie. I worked with him. He's a hardcore family man, a mountaineer, a hiker, and a hell of a good corrections officer. Came out. It was great to see a friendly face. And here's somebody I never heard of. Her car barely even ran, and she pulled over and she brought me 8 miles back to the trail. I didn't know if we were going to make it, but the people were just so nice. This lady was a hairdresser. She just helped all us through hikers get our hair back in order. And here's Red Hot getting a haircut in New Hampshire. And one of Red Hot's relatives knew I liked sweet tea, so they made arrangements to get some sweet tea. She did. She made arrangements to get some sweet tea out to me. And so I could never say thank you enough. I hope you want it. And this guy gave us trail magic in the last place you expect in the middle of a 100-mile wilderness. So yeah, you don't expect that kind of stuff. And of course, I had people who watched the videos from all around the country sending me supplies and personal notes and homemade cookies. And this is from some friends I met on the trail. After they went home, they continued to follow on Facebook, and they sent me a heck of a trail box. You just don't expect that kind of stuff when you're leaving. So people say, you know, the trail will provide, and if you want to get all spiritual and whatever, you can say somebody else provides. But honestly, to me, I think people provide, because the Appalachian Trail, you think is just one long ribbon of dirt, but really it's a trail of people. And so after all those people that I met and all that trail magic, you remember that dirty onion in the beginning? Each time somebody picked me up and said, hey, you going back to the trail? And I say, yeah, and he just tear off another layer of that dirty onion, you know. And somebody say, hey, you get pancakes on the side of the road, 7 o'clock in the morning. There goes another layer. And a box of supplies from some people that I met in the Smoky Mountains that are trail maintainers, and we made a connection in 5 minutes. And they sent a box of supplies out better than I would have bought. Layers coming off. And how about that birthday cake on the top of the mountain? That was the ultimate layer. So yeah, I changed a lot. But really, it really hit me when I got home and posted the last video. People were congratulating Red Hot and I. I was trying to follow and answer all the questions, but let me show you this one. This one really hit me. So it said, thank you, Sam and Red, for allowing myself and everyone else to hike the trail with you through your eyes. What a beautiful experience. And I said, thanks for the thoughtful comment. You're so welcome. And then it came back right away and it says, you really have no idea how much it meant to me. I have been diagnosed with terminal cancer and given less than 11 months on this earth, this beautiful earth. So following you meant the world to me. Thank you and Red. Now I can leave this beautiful earth in peace. God bless. So I'll tell you what, it's a long trail. And I hurt myself, I fell down, I tore my abdomen, had to be surgically repaired when I got home. I got poison ivy, I had to go to the hospital, get some shots and some prescription. I had a chest, a respiratory infection, hurt my finger. There were lonely stretches where I was missing my kids. All those things tugged me, tried to get me off the trail, but I stayed on the trail. And you know what? Every step, every raindrop, every snow and sleet, every cold wind was worth it because John was watching. And I didn't know you were out there, John. So I tried to get in touch with John, and of course, no avail. I looked him up on Google and I tried to do all research, but he already told me why he wasn't answering the phone. So, well, people want to know, well, what's your big takeaway? You know, well, my takeaway is pretty simple. Most people know it by the time they're 7 years old. Takes me a little bit longer, I guess. But I learned that you gotta always be aware. You gotta be aware of what you say, what you do, how you act. because somebody out there might be affected by your actions, like John here. So yeah, I'm a little bit more positive than I was when I started the trail. I'm a clean onion. So thank you very much, people, and feel free to chime in. This is the, believe it or not, the short version. I got a little overboard, but the long version's even better. If you get a chance, check out my book. It's on Amazon right now. It's on sale, so usually 15 bucks. I think it's now around 12 bucks or something, 11 bucks. Corinne, did you want to jump in? I don't know how to wrap these things up.
Yes, thank you so much. So yes, your book is Soul Searching, S-O-L-E, Soul Searching on the Appalachian Trail. The Belmont Public Library does have a few copies of it. Anybody's welcome to request it. You can pick it up from the library from parking lot pickup. Even though the building is closed, you can still pick up a copy of this book. I'll, as soon as this recording is ready, I'll be sharing that link around, and I'll also share a link to the library's copy of the book in case anybody wants to check that out. So we did have a couple more questions to add. So one of them is, what's the story with the stuffed toy you carried that we saw in some of your photos?
Yeah, somebody saw that, huh? So at the time, I had a little guy in my life. He's a lot older now, but he was 5 years old, and he didn't want me to be lonely in my hammock at night. So he gave me Kitty Cat. He had the exact same one. And he told me that was for me to keep me company at night in the middle of the woods. So Kitty Cat made it all the way back, and now he's back with the little guy who affectionately calls me Grandpa Sam.
That's really lovely. Awesome. It looks like someone has raised their hand. You can feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question that you want to ask. But it looks like you might have lowered your hand. But if you did have a question, anybody can feel free to unmute themselves. One question that I had is, of all of the gear that you brought, or all of the stuff that you brought with you, what was the worst or like the most useless thing that you brought with you?
Oh boy, so that's an easy one for me because I use a hammock the whole way, but in the Smoky Mountains, they say they only want you to use the shelters, and you have to fill out a permit to even hike through there, and they have a lot of real strict rules. So I brought a pad, a big, pad, blow-up pad, and I carried that sucker with me all the way till like Pennsylvania, and I never used the thing. And a lot of my pictures are sitting on the ground. And finally, I sent it back. I think I did use it one night on the whole trip, but after that, I just bought like a little waffle pad to carry with me if I want to take a nap in the middle of the afternoon or whatever. Most of the time, I just lay it on the ground.
And then one more question I had is that you mentioned that there are a lot of times that you're not that far from town, but in some of the more remote areas of the trail, how hard would it be to get off the trail in an emergency or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. So safety is a big deal. Of course, now everybody's concerned because we had some bad incidents on the trail. With all the cell towers on these mountain ranges and stuff, we have pretty good cell service within, well, I would say 2/3 of the trail. And the other parts, there's either not, really down in the hollers, as my friend Ron would say from West Virginia. There's some places that you won't get it, but on most of the tops of the mountain, or maybe you just have to get around a mountain, and it's pretty good. So chances are you can get help. Plus, the volunteer search and rescue, the EMTs, they're all geared up for it. They know we're coming through. They know there's going to be thousands of people. Over 3,000 people, 3 million people use some portion of the Appalachian Trail each year. So the communities along the trail are pretty geared up for it. And here's the other thing. If you fall and break your ankle, just something weird, you're not going to have to lay there very long because somebody's going to come walking down the trail behind you. Might be a half a mile behind you, but that means in 15 minutes he's going to be here. So safety on a trail, is pretty good. And also, to not be negligent, I want to tell you that if you're concerned about safety on the trail, let's say by a no-gooder or do-badder or whatever, you never have to be alone. I chose to sleep alone at night. Sometimes I choose to hike alone, but you never have to be alone. If you camp next to those shelters, there's usually people in the shelters, there's people around the shelters. You don't have to sleep in them. You can set your tents around it. So hikers, I like to compare hikers to muskox up in the Arctic. Like if you had a bunch of muskox out grazing and a wolf came around, all the muskox come together and they face the threat head on. And that's kind of like hikers do, you know? Good question.
Great, thank you.
Cool.
It looks like PJ, you unmuted yourself. Did you have something that you wanted to ask?
Oh, PJ Chapman?
Yes.
Yeah, hey, this is Uncle Paul.
Hey, Uncle Paul.
How you doing? Hey, first thing I want to say is I love privies. I love privies. As much as you hate them, you know, they're my bread and butter. What I wanted to ask you was what YouTuber Thru-Hikes did you watch, if any, before you went out on your trip?
Well, my whole thing, good question, Paul, Uncle Paul. So I started watching YouTube hikers a month before, and you know my favorite, Loner on the AT, was it Loner AT, I think 2012, is my favorite YouTuber of all times. And he was so mellow and so cool. And I would walk through areas on the trail and say, I wonder what Loner would do here. He was basically my mentor without ever meeting him. And of course, you know that I got to meet him the year I did it. So it was pretty exciting.
Great. Oh, and I don't know if you saw in the chat, so we have AT Gracie from Maine who's saying hi. You met at Trail Days
Hi,
last
AT
year.
Gracie. So I can only see a few people at a time, so I don't really know who's out there, but I do want to say, oh, there she is. I see her. I'd like to say thanks for everybody who came out today, and hope you enjoyed it. If you did get a little taste of it, go ahead and get the book. If not, wait for the program and over at Belmont, and I'll get a chance to meet you in person and really give you the meat and potatoes.
Thank you everybody so much for coming. We will have this recording available on our YouTube channel soon. I'll send that out. And again, I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, Sam, so much. We look forward to once the library can hopefully have in-person programs again soon, and we'll be able to invite you in person for the full program. If not, we'll make it work somehow. But thank you so much. I'll stick around for another couple of minutes and feel free to, we can have a few more questions, but if anybody has to head out, feel free. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.